At Eastern Communications, we believe in a strong and personal connection. In prioritizing both our high-tech and our high-touch solutions, we bring back the human connection in the ever-expanding industry of information and communications technology. In doing so, we've amassed a wide array of various solutions designed to not only improve our clients' businesses, but to also create seamless experiences for their own customers. Every business needs reliable connectivity in order to maintain its day-to-day processes. These are only some of the many solutions and services that Eastern Communications has established over the years for our many partners. And while we still have a long way to go, you can be sure that Eastern Communications will continue to be your partner and take you from where you are now to where you want to go. Together, we can all finish strong for our tomorrow.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of BusinessWorld Insights, exploring the now normal of local SMEs. In this session, presented in partnership with Eastern Communications, we'll be discussing the tools, strategies, support, and mindset needed for micro, small, and medium enterprises to best capture the opportunities of this late pandemic business environment. My name is Tiago Arnaiz. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Day 3 Innovations and Fort Health Data Systems, two health tech ventures based in the Philippines, and I'll be your moderator today. So joining me today, we have Mr. Senan M. Perlada, Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of PhilExport, the Philippine Exporters Confederation. Also joining us is Mr. Butch Maley, President of the Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation, and of course, Ms. Diana Crizel Montes, Strategic Segment Marketing Manager of Eastern Communications. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining.
Hi,
Good
Tiago.
morning.
Good morning, Tiago.
Thanks for having us.
Greetings.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So to start things off, let's call on PhilExport's Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Perlada, to talk about the now normal for Philippine MSMEs. Among Mr. Perlada's many fields of expertise are consulting on international business management, leadership and strategic interventions for SMEs, developing startup ecosystems, and scaling startups for domestic and international markets. Mr. Perlada, With vaccinations underway and business stakeholders already laying down the groundwork for recovery, it seems now may be the best time for MSME decision makers to begin strategizing. In fact, the United Nations Development Program sees MSMEs as key players in the nation's economic rebound. That's, of course, assuming we're able to provide them the financial support that they need, access to credit facilities, tax breaks, deferred loan payments, all coupled with stronger policy support. What do you see are the biggest challenges MSMEs face today, and what will be the biggest drivers for their growth in the coming quarters?
Thank you so much, Tiago, for the very kind introduction. And for those of us here in this online forum, my warmest greetings. Shout out to everyone. I hope that you're all in the best of health and keeping well. I'd like to thank Business World, the co-sponsors and collaborators, for inviting me to share my thoughts, this time from the purview of the private sector, and in the new role that I assumed at PhilExport after having retired from government service last November. On receiving the invitation, I found the title assigned to me, The Now Normal Track for MSMEs, quite intriguing, actually. Throughout this period of the pandemic, I've heard the use of similar terms or phrases making a play on the more familiar phrase, new normal. In addition to the now normal, I've heard of the next normal, used mainly by McKinsey and Euromonitor. And some other pundits have used quite the extreme, no normal or never normal. These phrases still reflect the uncertainty and continuing fear of people about what the future holds for them, and their innate desire for the pandemic to come to an end soonest and enable them to build back better lives in what hopefully would be a more sustainable world. As we speak, the world's economy's operating system is being rewritten by COVID-19. The disruptions caused by this pandemic has impacted long-established patterns in virtually every market, every sector of the world economy, indeed in every aspect of our lives. The disruptions are causing former trends to accelerate, some to break down, or some simply to break, perhaps never again to be seen. The fact that all these things are happening at the same time means that our world is changing radically from the one in which many of us grew up in, prospered, and formed the intuitions that are so vital to our decision-making during normal times. There is a powerful inclination among businesses, including MSMEs, to want the future to look much like the recent past. But this pandemic has wreaked havoc on forecasts and pro forma plans that were made simply by extrapolating recent experience into the near and distant future. Many of the assumptions, tendencies, and habits that had long proved to be reliable have suddenly lost much of their relevance. Unexpectedly, this has been more pronounced for MSMEs, actually the backbone of the nation for job creation and economic contribution. They are the pathfinders during our journey to economic recovery. So for MSMEs, there is an urgent imperative to adjust to the new realities now, to survive and eventually thrive onto the next normal. The major disruptions of this pandemic has begun to be somewhat tamed with the availability of vaccines and the ensuing massive rollout of vaccination programs, especially in major developed economies. Digital channels became the lifeline for MSMEs, and aided by learnings of the past 14 months, the world also seems to be getting a better grip on the new normal, the next normal, or if you will, the now normal. But after more than a year of various close open versions of community quarantines, what will drive the rebound and growth of MSMEs in the next normal? Well, if you recall, in April this year, China announced its first quarter GDP results, up 18.3% year-on-year. It has also been earnings season in the US, and the first quarter results have been generally good, but in fact phenomenal even for banks and investment banks. What is driving this growth? Government spending, of course, especially on infrastructure in China, and we can expect the US to follow with President Biden's pushing for that, and everywhere else that is opening up where revenge spending can take place. So let me try to share my screen now. Revenge spending refers to an overindulgence in retail therapy by consumers who have missed shopping at their favorite outlets due to the lockdown. It is like, getting a chance to party after maintaining the restraint for months. Revenge shopping usually refers to the overindulgence to celebrate an occasion or to overcome frustration. China is hoping for revenge spending the way the US is aiming for China-style infrastructure spending. And if both countries achieve their complementary goals, it will be party time economically for them. But for those not participating in the recovery, however, misery does not love company and could make things worse for them. The gap is widening between the pace setters and the laggards. What could really spur growth and recovery for smaller economies is being able to participate in the spending spree related to the economic recovery. Expect Vietnam, for example, to have a great year like China. For those countries not yet open or dealing with various forms of quarantines and lockdowns, including the Philippines, well, it's just too bad as of now. It is said that the best part of the party may be over by the time they get their acts together. China was the first country to witness the trend of revenge spending. In several Chinese cities, consumers flocked the various brand outlets to beat the lockdown blues. For example, the French brand Hermes, Guangzhou flagship store in China, reportedly did $2.7 million in sales on the day that it reopened in April. This is the biggest single-day shopping at a luxury outlet in China. Revenge spending could play an important role to revive this discretionary spending. Well, luxury might be a necessity for a few, but most shoppers will stick to what they need to buy and hold on to the urge to splurge for more predictable times. For one, the easing up of lockdowns in the local market is building up demand again. Demand has spiked even more significantly, especially in developed markets, counting among them the Philippines' major export markets such as China, USA, and Europe. So revenge spending had been seen to drive consumption and the sharp demand for imports along mostly digital channels in these markets as they step up the pace of opening up. Information and insight will also be a key driver for the rebound and growth of MSMEs in the now normal. MSMEs were and still are particularly vulnerable to the economic impacts of COVID-19. In the Philippines and in many other countries in general, targeting economic relief for small businesses had been a critical component of policy interventions by government agencies. These interventions have included a range of fiscal and monetary policies as well as initiatives promoting digital adoption. COVID-19 pushed more consumers online and accelerated the adoption of e-commerce. This required further digital adaptation by MSMEs. While the immediate benefits of digital interventions were varied between sectors and government recognized that the adoption of digital solutions can help MSMEs in areas such as managing transactions at a distance, delivering goods efficiently, facilitating access to financial services, and engaging with new and existing consumers. Supporting MSMEs' digitalization efforts amid COVID-19, therefore, required policymakers to adopt a two-pronged set of interventions to allow MSMEs to reap the benefits of the digital world while overcoming the challenges of digitalization. These interventions highlight important consideration for MSMEs, that COVID-19 is still a crisis that is pushing more consumers online, and the acceleration of e-commerce is the way to go to carry on business in a high-tech, low-touch environment. No business sector has been more shaken than MSMEs in the Philippines and, of course, elsewhere. MSMEs are more vulnerable to economic shocks because of their limited cash reserves and compared to larger enterprises, as well as lower levels of productivity. Some MSMEs have been forced to close down their businesses and lay off employees, while many others are facing difficulty maintaining positive cash flow. Surveys of MSMEs conducted during the economy's lockdown identified the following pain points as significant. One, labor shortages because of mobility issues. Second, lack of raw materials. supply chain issues. Third is weak consumer demand for non-essential goods and services. And fourth, significant stress on the balance sheets and cash flow of MSMEs. Now, the third driver would be accelerated digital transformation and rapid adoption and adaptation of technology. More than a year into the COVID-19 crisis, a McKinsey Global survey on digital strategy indicates that the pandemic has increased the pace of business, and that technology capabilities will be critical to the company's COVID-19 exit strategies, as well as to what comes next. After seeing how the pandemic has sped up the adoption of digital technologies by several years, they took a closer look at how companies are rethinking the role of digital technology in their overall business strategy and how to conduct business at the quickening pace that's now needed to operate. Now, McKinsey calls this technology endowment, which are linked to better economic outcomes. At the same time, the results confirm that many organizations could be missing opportunities to invest in the areas of their business models that are most at risk because of digital disruption. A key takeaway is that companies with better overall technology capabilities, talent, leadership, and resources are seeing better economic outcomes. Small and mid-sized enterprises that join online marketplaces are taking advantage of this potential to scale up rapidly and connect with customers and suppliers anywhere in the world. Facebook, for example, estimates that its platform includes more than 50 million such companies, double the 25 million they had in 2013, and some 30% of their fans are cross-border. Amazon now hosts 2 million third-party sellers. The share of online MSMEs that export is over 7 times higher than among offline businesses of comparable size. With a 72.7% internet penetration rate, it is clear that digitalization efforts are suitable for MSMEs recovery. And digital innovation certainly present opportunities for MSMEs to remain relevant in the market. For example, as part of their digital transformation, DOST has launched a new website, Mimaropa Ventures PH, which allows business owners in Occidental Mindoro, Oriental Mindoro, Marinduque, Romblon, and Palawan to promote their products remotely. The DTI also made its efforts to help Philippine MSMEs recover from the pandemic effects. It launched a national campaign called Buy Local, Go Local on some digital platforms. And these are for e-commerce, via e-commerce and social media. This campaign has, of course, boosted local business confidence. MSMEs in the country surprisingly have actually leveraged digital technology to support their businesses and deliver services during work from home arrangements with their employers. Now, here are some examples of technology that MSMEs can adopt and adapt. Process innovations for digital transformation. Big data analytics can actually provide important insights into business processes and uncover opportunities to cut costs and increase efficiency. Cloud computing offers opportunities for MSMEs to access business intelligence solutions without committing to the upfront software, hardware, and personal investments required for their in-house implementation. And finally, smaller enterprises can increase their visibility and global reach via e-commerce channels, which provides access to a broader consumer base extend far beyond the traditional market boundaries. Now, the next driver would be, after digital transformation, is greater global connections. Taking a regional perspective like APEC, for example. The cross-ministerial initiative of APEC worked with digital platforms like JD.ID, Gojek, and others to provide education and training for MSMEs to go digital and expand market reach, not only in response to the crisis, but also to explore their digital future. APEC has consistently acknowledged that MSME digitalization is a critical step for the region. And prior to the pandemic, actually, the 2019 APEC ministerial statement noted that e-commerce platforms can serve as important channels for MSMEs to gain greater access to diverse global markets, which can mitigate risk within supply chains. COVID-19 has emphasized that and made, in fact, Boracay, the Boracay Action Agenda, or BAA, that was in APEC 2015, to globalize MSME and integrate them into value chains even more urgent. And lastly, now let's look at the fifth driver that I can see, and that is new opportunities for phygital business models. Phygital has been used by both McKinsey and Euromonitor. In a survey, for example, that McKinsey conducted in April, one of the findings is that digital's growth has actually plateaued already in the past 6 months in developed economies. And these include Philippines' major export markets such as the US and Europe, and may begin to slip back once the pandemic eases, even as total digital adoption stays well above the pre-pandemic level. Since adoption of digital channels is still coming from a low base, the local Philippine market will continue to exhibit robust growth in digital channels, but just like counterparts in developed economies, Philippine consumers can be expected to return to brick-and-mortar stores post-pandemic. The pandemic has also accelerated digital adoption, but physical channels are making a comeback. Just try going out nowadays. You know, the traffic is coming back again. Having an omni-channel presence will drive MSMEs to continue with efforts to have an omni-channel presence. So MSMEs can hold on to and look forward to new digital consumers by improving digital experiences and investing in phygital and putting consumer trust at the heart of all they do. New adopters had little choice during lockdowns but to embrace digital channels, and the channels they entered were more likely to have been newly built with less satisfying user experience than established ones. So, MSMEs can reinvent the future, obviously, by going digital, and especially for MSMEs that cater to the end consumer, the future is arriving more quickly than anyone could have imagined a few months ago, accelerating digital trends that had already been transforming consumer behavior. But with new opportunities for innovative phygital business models also come a lot of challenges. Now, what are the major challenges faced by MSMEs? Customer acquisition, conversion, and retention. Since everyone is going online, our MSMEs must be able to find these customers online, convert them, and retain them. This has been quite a challenge because obviously our MSMEs are not exactly equipped with either the hardware or the software, or at least most of them are still ill-equipped to be able to have their practices for customer acquisition, conversion, and retention at par with their bigger counterparts. Hyper competition. Everyone's online, and therefore you have to compete. You have to compete with everyone else that is using that channel. Supply chain issues, from raw material supply to final mile fulfillment, is a challenge faced by MSMEs. This is something that not familiar with them, and so it is only now actually that this is gaining traction even for MSMEs who are actually using social media initially to be able to still remain relevant to their customers in the market. There's also, of course, lack of financing, which Thiago had mentioned, and other resources for innovation and scaling operations. And lastly, I came from government, but it's still there. You know, bureaucratic opacity and the cost of doing business is still a major concern of our MSMEs. Others are lack of digital infrastructure, connectivity issues, as mentioned also by Thiago. The cost of data is part of that as well. Digital talent acquisition and retention. You know, our MSMEs are not exactly all digital natives, especially those that are family-owned. And so, you know, talent acquisition is important because in this new system, we need the tech-savvy people to be able to join our respective MSME operations. But it's not easy for them to attract this kind of talent. Behind the border issues, particularly for Philippine exporters. You know, we take this for granted, but a lot of the issues that we face actually for exporters are not even in the markets. They're right here right here in the Philippines, and we term them as behind the border issues. And of course, going cross-border would be the market access issues of non-tariff barriers and non-tariff measures faced by our exporters. Well, talking about exports, PhilExport is the umbrella organization of Philippine exporters with 20 regional chapters and 17 industry sectors represented. As of the end of last year, we have more than 4,000 members, of which 2,000, almost 2,500 are active. Now you might say, wow, members in the roster is 4,000, but only 2,400 are active. Well, the reason is precisely this pandemic and the difficulties that have arisen because of the challenges of the pandemic. And as you know, membership issues become one of the first to go. Paying your membership dues and remaining active in your organizations is one of the first things to go in the case of facing crisis. And they can be classified as 65% micro, 14% small, 16% medium, and 5% large firms. So essentially, PhilExport is really an MSME business support organization. What are value propositions for the rebound, recovery, and resilience of MSME exporters? PhilExport at least has a modest sectoral support fund, which supports smaller business support organizations. Regional support fund with the 20 regional chapters that we have. We are able to provide them from revenues from our membership, from our operations of a customs bonded warehouse, common customs bonded warehouse. We have some rental income that we're able to plow back to the exporting community through the sectoral support and regional support fund. We also have a project called the Road to Fire, which is the fourth industrial revolution, in which case we are teaching our MSMEs to take advantage of the innovation and the fourth industrial revolution to use more technology in their manufacturing operations, as well as to be able to participate in the more of the tech-driven industries that we have, so that we can compete in global markets. We're able to provide information and insights from subject matter experts as well. And, well, this is good news. I guess in a few weeks' time, soon enough, PhilExport will have its more sophisticated web portal. It is actually now still under construction, but we will be able to participate in our own, or have our own digital transformation. One of the ways by which is to have our own web portal, actually by this month. What are our other value propositions for the rebound, recovery, and resilience of MSME exporters? Our advocacies, of course, for the ease of doing business, addressing supply chain issues, and the overall enabling environment faced by Philippine exporters. Support for export promotions and trade facilitation programs and projects in collaboration with government, development partners, and other business support organizations. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone for listening and hope that we can support our MSMEs in their continuous drive, especially our exporters, to be able to conquer global markets despite the difficulties given us by COVID-19. Maraming salamat po.
Mr. Palada, thank you very much for that. With digital transformation accelerating, like you said, I'm hoping we can circle back during the Q&A later and explore exactly the types of information and insights that will be critical for MSMEs looking to take on those challenges you listed, hyper competition, the customer outreach, infrastructure, and of course, bureaucracy. But speaking of recovery and resiliency, let's dive a little deeper into the resources available for MSMEs to strengthen their operations. And who better to lead that conversation than the president of the Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation and president of Startup Accelerator Idea Space Foundation, Mr. Butch Maley. Mr. Maley, through your work championing the local innovation community, you must have a wealth of firsthand experience seeing what impact-driven ventures can do to scale solutions for their community's most pressing needs. With the right tools, strategies, and partners, MSMEs can not only survive these hard times, but really lead the charge in our nation's economic recovery, as Mr. Perlada noted earlier. But for those who have yet to digitally transform their operations, or perhaps don't know where to start looking for those strategic partners, how should MSME founders orient themselves today? Mr. Meili?
Thanks, Thiago. And you can call me Butch, by the way. But I have a brief presentation to hopefully answer most of your questions there. So if you can go to my first slide. Well, Thiago, these are the faces of the ladies, and they're mostly ladies, who I met during a focus group and a subsequent forum with sari-sari store owners. There were 400 of them. And this really brought home the whole issue of MSMEs during COVID. You know, they were just like everyone else. They were worried, they were scared. They were scared to reopen. And, you know, we tried to provide as many tools as we could to help them. But you'll see that these types of MSMEs, like sari-sari stores and other small businesses, have suffered quite a bit. 70% of them closed during COVID. Many had to lay off their workers, and many of these businesses may never reopen, but we're going to try and help them. Next slide, please. This is a little bit about the Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation. It's made up of many of the large companies in the country. It was formed after Typhoon Ondoy swamped Manila with its floods in 2009, 2010. The president at the time asked for a public-private sector partnership, and that's how PDRF was born. We have our own operations center based in Clark, where we monitor storms, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, and now the pandemic. And in addition, we work in several areas. Next slide, please. We're present almost throughout the country, from Batanes to Marawi and Zamboanga in the south. Wherever there's a disaster, we try and help. And we try and use the private sector to assist the government, and also working with the UN and international agencies. And we're present in all four pillars. This is in mitigation, preparedness, recovery, and response in terms of disasters and emergencies. Next slide, please. One of our most important initiatives, though, is helping MSMEs, both in being prepared for disasters and helping them recover from them. And we have an ongoing program which we hope that they'll all take advantage of. But we also work with government agencies through our public sector initiative, in which we work with the Office of Civil Defense in terms of preparing government agencies for crises. Next slide, please. We formed a resilience core group. It's a public-private sector partnership. We formed it in 2016 together with the Department of Trade and Industry, PhilExport, with my good friend Sinan Perlada, and a number of other groups there, Asian Pacific Alliance for Disaster Management, PCCI, and a few others. The whole idea was to have this all these different groups band together to help prepare our SMEs in so many ways for what may happen, whether it's an earthquake or a pandemic. And the idea was that we went throughout the country. We sent teams to train over 9,000 small businesses. And in addition, we've had about 6,000 more join us in online forums. This is an ongoing initiative of ours. Next slide, please. One of the products of this Resilience Core Group is the MSME Guidebook. And it's meant to be the primary reference material for small businesses to learn how to do a business continuity plan and to make them aware of why it's important. It has a checklist, it has a list of contacts, emergency contacts, and it's really a how-to in terms of how to be prepared for an ongoing crisis or disaster that may come your way. Next slide, please. Now, CCAP is an online resource. It's free. So I urge everybody to take advantage of it. We partnered with UNDP, UN OCHA, and the Connecting Business Initiative of the UN to launch it during the COVID crisis. The whole idea behind CCAP is that small businesses can go to this online resource. It's a one-stop digital hub. You can find out how to get a loan. You can also find out, you can get online mentoring in terms of your specific problems and issues. You can get guidance there, and it's a free resource. So I urge everybody to go to seekup.com.ph. Next slide, please. Now, Kubo is another free resource. It's a public-private sector partnership between DOST, Department of Trade and Industry, JP Morgan, and Idea Space Foundation. The whole idea behind this, and I want to cite my good friend Sinen Perlada. We miss him. He was at the Department of Trade and Industry, and he's one of the major players behind Kubo. And the idea is to help groom our startups so that we too can have a Grab, an Airbnb, an Uber grown here in the Philippines. And everybody again is welcome here, and we're stage agnostic. So whether you're you have an idea or whether you have an actual business, it's a good place to go for free. Next slide, please. Now, we have many ways to talk to startups, and one of the most imaginative, in my mind anyway, is this comic book. It features it's called Dimatinag. Features a superstar or superhero called Tina, who recovers from disasters and helps prepare for her business for disasters. There's an app that you can take advantage of. There are also physical copies that we're hoping to make available of this comic book, and we hope to have several issues of it as we go along through this COVID crisis. Next slide, please. Now, Tina, while she's going through her struggles with her MSME, finds a gift to help her recover and prepare for disasters. And this is a Katatagan in a box, resilience in a box. And it's actually a mobile app that everyone can make use of and download on a smart or Android phone. Again, this is a how-to on how to come up with a business continuity plan, how to prepare your small business for a crisis, and how to recover from one. So again, it's a free resource. We've got an iAdapt platform at PDRF, which everybody can take advantage of. We have all these courses which you can take, and we hope you get a chance to check us out. And these are some of the many resources that are available. Thanks a lot, Tiago, for giving me the opportunity to present here today.
Thank you very much, Butch. Always a pleasure to have you on these sessions. Despite the harrowing situation, it's comforting to know that partners like the PDRF are taking a proactive role developing resources and launching programs to get our MSMEs, these frontliners of our business community, back on their feet. Now, of course, any conversation around entrepreneurship and resilience must be rooted in a holistic definition of health and well-being. As an innovator in health myself, I can say that this past year has really only highlighted just how lacking our infrastructure for workforce wellness is, as well as our understanding of how that directly translates to productivity and our businesses' bottom lines. Ms. Montes, the workplace setting has always been the major frontline in our struggle to improve well-being among working-age Filipinos. As Mr. Maley highlighted earlier, a silver lining of this past year has been a surge in tools and strategies to better connect us all, something we'll surely benefit from well beyond the pandemic. Could you lead us in exploring how MSMEs should be looking at workplace well-being and the resources available to improve well-being and productivity?
Thank you, Tiago, at magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat, mga ka-Eastern. It's a pleasure to walk you through the role our mental health plays as we continue operating our businesses and its impact on our personal lives. Having a healthy headspace is something not only individuals should be mindful of, but also to be considered by employers and businesses, big or small. I'm also quite thrilled to share solutions on how businesses can manage their workforce through tools to ensure their effectivity and help keep a healthy mental well-being at work. After all, a business' main resource is their team. In Willis Towers Watson's 2020 Global Benefits Attitude Survey, it's been found that employees struggle with stress, anxiety, or depression during COVID-19. More than 90% reported that they have experienced some anxiety, and 55% reported a moderate to high degree of anxiety, on which specific groups are struggling more than others. They are the LGBT plus group, people with disabilities, and those struggling financially. The fact that the numbers are negative shows they are more vulnerable to severe stress, anxiety, and depression. According to the study, a strong social connection at work is one key factor in maintaining a healthy mental well-being. Team members who get the help they need are more engaged and productive. Over 20% of them was reported experiencing higher work engagement and fewer absences. So we see here how support from work plays a part in an employee's effectivity. To give us a closer look at how we're coping mentally, let's zero in on the psychological impact of COVID-19 in companies in the Asia-Pacific region. It's been found in Profile Asia's study that 45% of the respondents felt that COVID-19 has unfavorably affected their own mental health, and 60% felt that COVID-19 has negatively impacted the mental health of their colleagues. From this, we realize that not only do we recognize the challenges of this condition in ourselves, but it can also be observed in our teammates. 43% of the respondents revealed that their management's response to the pandemic increased their stress level, which leads us to question, what specific reasons at work are causing these team members' heightened stress levels? The reasons range from lack of communication and expectation setting from management, unclear direction and last-minute changes on onboarding of new executives or team members, and being constantly online, which forces them to juggle work and caring for the family. I'm sure most of you have experienced these since working from home last year. This year, many companies, I'm sure including yours, have been very hopeful about recovery. But as we all get busy trying to get our businesses back on track, our report says we shouldn't overlook our team members or our employees' mental well-being, as well as our own. So we wonder, how have we been doing at work here in the Philippines in the light of the now normal, while we live with COVID and adopt a remote work setup? Overall, the National Center for Mental Health has reported that calls regarding depression increased by 500% from pre-pandemic period. PVP Inc. has also reported that of those who work from home, 16% have experienced critical stress levels, 31% suffered from anxiety, and 22% had depression. It is said that working from home increases the likelihood of experiencing severe depression by up to 5 times. It's also been found that millennials are twice as likely to experience severe stress and 1.8 times more likely to develop severe anxiety compared to the older generation. And this is not to say that Generation Z has it any easier. In fact, the likelihood of these experiences are much higher in their age group. Despite these issues, many believe that remote work is here to stay. So we see many reasons why. For employees, definitely there's a reduction in expenses, increased productivity, and having the opportunity to qualify for job based on skills instead of location. For businesses, there's also a reduction in expenses and an access to a more competitive talent pool as they can hire virtually from anywhere. And in turn, customers get to interact with the best talent. And for the environment, I think we can all agree that pollution is lowered since most of us started working from home. The statistics and employee sentiments I shared earlier reflect the predominant theme as employees work remotely and isolated from each other. As we enjoy the seemingly increased family time and avoid the tiresome commute to and from work, we also lost that convenience of a quick pep talk with our team members and collaboration. Business owners don't easily recognize or see the difficulties and frustrations they may be able to help with. Here we see the top 3 struggles of remote workers around the world, and I won't be surprised if you've experienced at least one of these. To be honest, at different points, I felt the same way. So we'll get back to addressing these challenges in a short bit. As businesses around the world recognize the prevalence of stress and anxiety at the workplace, let us look at the steps and best practices they have taken to address the gaps. Again, taking from the Willis Towers Watson survey, companies have started to train their management to recognize the importance of flexibility to employee needs, to manage and engage a remote workforce, to recognize signs of anxiety, and to recognize signs of burnout. It's also important to know that 85% of the respondents have experienced increased access to video conferencing to keep them connected. And 56% reported their companies foster opportunities like virtual coffee breaks to connect for non-work purposes. So that sounds kind of fun. And I know of one or two local companies that actually do it here in Manila. So same with these companies I've mentioned who have resorted to said best practices and virtual opportunities to connect, our businesses can leap forward from the mental health struggles our employees or even we ourselves experience while working remotely through technological advancements. It's true that most of us experience discomfort working from home and found it hard to talk to our team members and even with our superiors since we don't physically see each other. Because of this, we end up being confused in what we should do. Sometimes we want to clarify directions, and both employees and business owners can't have that many consultations like we used to in the office. Information are sometimes not relayed to us properly, and sometimes reports get delayed. While these are real work challenges, there's actually something we can do thanks to the advent of productivity and collaboration tools. I'm talking about the cloud-based applications that can allow for smooth, secure communication and collaboration, even if we are at different places. In fact, at Eastern, we're quite grateful that even before the pandemic hit, our systems for productivity and collaboration were already in place. So essentially, we just transferred physical meetings, discussions, and consultations virtually. We know sometimes there's a bit of reassurance in seeing other people like coworkers, even just on video calls. The app that we use for work allows us to feel we're in the same room where we see everyone all at the same time in one frame. So this helps us with video call fatigue we experience when we do our virtual calls. These virtual meetings and appointments can also be linked up with your calendar so no one gets to miss it. Even our external contacts can attend our meetings and chat with us in the video call chat room. So we simply send them a link, and even if they don't have the app on their devices, they can still join in the discussion. One other tool in this cloud-based solution allows us to work on reports or files at the same time. You can in fact see who in the team is working on it the exact moment you're writing on the document. So that's kind of cool. It gives us a sense of comfort that we're all in this together. Another thing it can do is help you send links instead of the whole file, which is very helpful as it doesn't use up the rest of your bandwidth. We also get to use a project management tool, which is called a planner, that allows us to not only monitor the progress of our project, but also allows us to assign to team members and design a workflow. So imagine all these in one unified suite, which could help your team work together with ease. Given these tools, even when we don't see each other physically, we get to work as a team quite productively and efficiently. Another top challenge remote workers are dealing with is loneliness. And yes, we hear you, as we also suffer from cabin fever at some point, not being able to see family, peers, and bosses. We feel alone and isolated from our social and work lives. It's quite unfortunate, but this is our reality now, and best we can do is find a way to at least offer some relief to our team members. Here at Eastern, we found many uses for our existing collaboration apps to help us stay connected, even for non-work related activities. Once in a while, our HR team would invite us to participate in a game of Kahoots, which we conduct through a video call and chat application. We are reminded of the event as the invite is synced with our calendar, so we don't get to miss it. In this Kahoots game, we are given a chance to show our competitive side and showcase our general knowledge prowess. We have also participated in physical and mental wellness activities such as yoga and other social events. So these activities get to give us a sense of comfort, camaraderie, and fun and entertainment, even while cooped up at home and we can't see each other face to face. Since working from home, has any one of you ever experienced feeling the need to do more since there's no one there to see you work? So don't worry, you're not alone, as this is a major challenge for remote workers. At one point, some of us have lost the sense of break since we don't need to commute to and from work, which usually demarcates the time we begin and end work for the day. If I may share with you, what we learned at work is to harness our existing apps to help us communicate efficiently by knowing the right channels to use. For example, sometimes we get tempted to channel all our communication into one single app, like in our email. While this may look manageable, it's not exactly efficient as emails are not designed for collaboration. This is why an email has an inbox and an outbox. It is meant to give virtualization of our old in trace and out trace, which allowed some time for the recipients of documents to get back to their sender. So we can use the email for messages to a targeted number of known people where a few replies are expected. So if you would need over 3 replies, then the discussion will have to be taken elsewhere. At Eastern, we get to use the chat box in our app to quickly consult anyone from our company or quickly discuss a few details about projects. If you would need to introduce a new plan or initiative with the team, we usually invite them through a video call so stakeholders can conveniently present and relay ideas real time. So these apps have also helped us prioritize our tasks. For example, we're able to prioritize emails that need our immediate attention because team members can use the at function, like how we do it on our social media, to call the attention of the person you're directing the email to. So this pops up as a notification, so we get alerted of the message right away. We also use a planner app so we can track where we are in all our ongoing projects or to whom the project is still with in the workflow. Everyone involved in the project has visibility, and this way, we can prioritize projects that need more assistance. I also receive reports about the amount of time I spend using these collaboration tools, and it gives me a notion of when to take on more work or slow down. This helps very much since, like I said, sometimes we just lose sight of how much work we've already been doing at a particular time. With all these digital advancements, we can find ways to make it a bit easier for all of us as we continue working remotely. Which is why I am personally grateful for being in a work environment that supports us and ensures we stay connected, seen, and heard through these technical advancements, especially right now that we don't see each other for work. So without hubris, I'm happy to share that these collaboration tools have enabled our management to show they care for us in these trying times, as you can see in the recognitions Eastern has received since last year. So before I end, I'd like to share with you a quote from one of my favorite poets, Maya Angelou. Each prison deserves a day away in which no problems are confronted, no solutions are searched for. Each of us needs to withdraw from the cares which will not withdraw from us. This reminds us that as human beings, we deserve to take a breather. Even when we know our business is hard hit and we feel the need to move fast and work fast to recover, we need to rest our mind and our spirit because there's always going to be work and more work. We need to take a step back and rest so we can continue on the next day. Life is a marathon, and we, together with our team, should be able to keep their endurance. Mind your body and mind your mind. You deserve it. So that's it for me. Thank you so much for listening, and would love to hear some of your thoughts and questions later. Back to you, Tiago.
Oh, thank you very much, Ms. Montes. Now, the COVID-19's impact on our workforce's mental well-being really does present a second hidden pandemic that affects organizations as concretely as this viral one that we've been focusing on. So really appreciate the fantastic pro tips for bridging that remote divide with new digital tools. Now, if I can invite all our speakers back, actually, I think we have time for a few questions from our comments. Please feel free to chime in with any insights you'd like to share. So thanks for joining us again, everyone. Let's start by framing this discussion again. So when we talk about economic recovery, the most immediate image that comes to mind is customers flooding back to brick and mortar establishments, right? So that party time revenge spending that Mr. Perlado mentioned earlier, of course, LGU restrictions permitting. So to paraphrase this first question in the comments, what pressing obstacles do you feel have been the most overlooked when it comes to the recovery of our MSME community? How do we ensure that this recovery is sustainable? Maybe I can throw this to any of the speakers want to start first?
Well, I guess I'll take it on first. Yeah. Thank you, Tiago. Thank you, Butch, and thank you, Diane. Great to be talking here with you guys. Well, for me, what I see really as the challenge is the kind of close open kind of thing that we have in terms of the pandemic. Now, I've had my opinion about this even early on, that I think we should have really made a bolder decision to have harder lockdowns earlier during the pandemic. instead of having this open close kind of thing, which is really very well, among others, very confusing, as well as very challenging for our MSMEs. No, if you look, for example, at the restaurant sector, the tourism sector, most especially those in services, no. Where close open means, will you have transportation available? Will the mobility be there? Okay. Will you be able to plan for a longer period other than half month to a month? Can you expect that? Which is very difficult, really nowadays. And I guess it could only be really, shall we say, addressed if we had if the vaccination rollout would be quicker, right? And the organization of being able to get vaccination for people that actually need to be vaccinated right away in order to open the economy much faster. So these are things I think that are making it difficult for our MSMEs in this particular time. No, and to me, I came from government, right? And I was a big fan actually of Bayanihan 1. Actually, yung ano pa eh, I was a big fan of the very first PESA, actually, the Philippine Economic Stimulus Act, where it was really a massive, stimulus package. I was kind of disappointed when it got chopped up and it got delayed and all of that. And now we are already in Bayanihan 3, okay? And we've not been able to address what we would have addressed before, making a bigger sacrifice in the beginning. But anyway, so these are things, I guess, you might say, even from my side, rantings on what should have been done and all of that. Exporters were lucky in the sense that, the sector was not actually, was considered essential primarily, but there is a digital divide and there is a big gap, because the major big exporters in the export processing zones, okay, they are, they have resources to have on-site, for example, employees, so they can really continue to operate, which is not exactly possible for our MSMEs. So even if, I would say, well, I'd call it now maybe even lip service that, the exporters are there and they're able to operate. That is not actually the reality on the ground. So I guess it all boils down also to policy and that social contract. Remember, I don't know, Butch, the social contract, meaning to say, I will follow what government says. But you have to take care of me. You have to take care of my livelihood. You have to take care of what I will eat, the following day, so that I will stay locked in for 2 weeks, etc. So there, I think that's what really what the situation has been that has made it very difficult for our MSMEs.
Right, Butch, maybe you wanted to jump in on that.
Yeah, I think Tiago, I think there's three main obstacles. I mean, the one is the lack of finance. Many MSMEs cash reserves are gone. They've been drained throughout this COVID. It's been going on for a long time for us here, and to be honest, it's going to be a while before we can get back to normal, or what we used to regard as normal in 2019. The second issue would be the fact that consumer demand may not be there because people aren't ready to go back to stores until they feel safe. So until the vaccines are rolled out much more widely than we're seeing today, that's not going to happen. I guess the third problem is what Sinan mentioned in his presentation, is that MSMEs are not that familiar with the digital world that we're seeing taking place all around us. COVID accelerated the digital shift by at least 10 years. And we've all had to catch up. And whether it's consuming entertainment, whether it's holding meetings like this, whether it's doing online shopping, things have changed. And we really have to be flexible and adopt. And so these are some of the issues, but there's some free resources, as I mentioned, ccup.com, as I mentioned earlier, and also you can download a lot of these things. Kubo is there for startups as well. Oh, there are a number of startups that actually help MSMEs go digital and digitize payments. PayMongo is one, ChatGenie. There's a number of them that do this. They help them list their products on Amazon. Easy Fulfill, I think, it does that. And there are other, Mosaic does it for restaurants. So really, there are all these startups that are focusing on these niches to help them go digital. And you can get a lot of that through DTI and Kubo, Innovation Hub.
Fantastic. Diana, anything you wanted to add there?
Yes, actually, besides what Butch and Mr. Berlada have shared, I think it's the MSME's limitations in being able to connect and talk to their customers at this time, as well as managing their employees remotely, like I mentioned earlier. So we know that the brick and mortar business setup has been a reliable model for most MSMEs ever since, but I think they can break from this limitation through exploring the already available social media platforms to reach their audience. For example, they can have an online visibility and start transacting there. When it comes to managing their employees, while most of us are working offsite, collaboration tools could substantially help with the operations and keep their employees connected and motivated.
Yeah. That's Let me just add to that, because the statistics have it. Philippines or Philippine residents, we're still actually leading in terms of social media usage, right? So we're on the internet 9.5 hours, the latest figures, I think, and of that, about 1/3 is on social media. Okay, so we are number one there, basically, but our MSMEs are not used to using it for business. Okay, they are not used to using that for business, and this is the kind of thing that DTI, of course, is helping with. But it takes what you might call this, anong tawag dyan? Acculturation ba? You really have to get that in them, that there's a lot more things that I will be able to achieve to connect with over 2 billion people on the internet and really make use of this for business. So I think again, the information and insight provided by people like from Kubo, and being able to get shall we say, help from the platformers. And we kind of have to surrender already to saying that these are the guys who can do it. We better trust them, right? So yeah, guys like Easy Fulfill, helping our small exporters to get cross-border, even find out the last mile or the final mile delivery and fulfillment over there. Little things like this, and with the proof of concept, I hope that the bandwagon will be bigger and better for all of us.
Yeah, we have a second question here. I suppose this is more of a shorter one. What is the biggest lesson that you've gleaned from the struggles of the past year that you believe MSMEs should carry with them as our community charts its path to recovery? I'm paraphrasing, but maybe we can start with Butch. Give us the grassroots perspective.
There's several lessons, Thiago, but I think it's good to have emergency cash reserves. I think that's important for all small businesses. And I think it's also important for them to have a business continuity plan so that you're ready because it could be a typhoon, could be an earthquake, could be a volcanic eruption. But this pandemic is that type of thing, except that it's so prolonged. But just to be prepared and have that plan ready so that you know what to do when it happens. You've got a checklist, you've got the contacts, and how to get a loan and all that. And I guess the idea of going digital, this is an old world's dying in front of us and a new world's being born. And it'd probably be a good idea to be part of this new world. Thanks.
Yeah, maybe as a rejoinder to what Butch has mentioned, even Phil Export, for example, this business continuity plan. Basically, the business continuity plan was really more for disasters, which disaster resiliency and all of that, right? So, you're kind of chugging along, just having to see, so what do we do when there's an earthquake, or what do we do when there's a fire, or what do we do when there's this big typhoon, and we don't have power for like 2 weeks, and we can't we can't ask people to work, etc. But this pandemic has actually accelerated it, and even in Phil Export, right now we are in this process already of improving, or shall we say, leveling up our business continuity plan beyond the disasters, beyond disaster resiliency, because precisely we want to be future ready. I'd call it future ready, not future proof, but future ready, because we know that this pandemic, if it blows over, the likelihood is that there's going to be another one, right? So it's no longer like beyond the human experience to assume that it's not going to happen again and all of that. And so I think I agree with you. Business continuity plan. Realize that really this world has really changed, and a lot of the ways that have affected everyone, workers, consumers, etc., etc. It's really a different world. Maganda yung sinabi mo, Butch. I mean, a new world is actually being born. A new world is really being born.
That's right, Mr. Perlada. Butch, actually, I very much agree with what you've said about business continuity, and acknowledging that, businesses at this point have different needs already that they will carry on until, after this pandemic. So, and I think we all have learned, not just the MSMEs, that the pandemic has re-engineered the way we work and operate. So now we're seeing that once we're back to the pandemic period, there is merit to keeping an online personality for your business to engage your customers. Because of this, we've been forced to explore new channels for businesses like e-commerce, which some may have not considered before. So we have also discovered the benefits of remote work, that it's feasible for some businesses pala, and the pandemic urged us to digitally transform at the pace we've never imagined we could. So we've also never thought that our mental health would be one of our main concerns, not just at the individual level, but also at work. And that we've come to know and hear more conversations about it. So there.
Yeah, no, speaking of this now normal, no, so this past year I've moderated a number of online webinars around the struggles of our business community. I have to say it's been extremely uplifting being able to look to the near future and focus on our path to recovery. So from what you've all shared, there are clear action steps, yes, but also many reasons to be optimistic. And many partners ready to come in to assist our MSMEs. No? We have one final question that I'd like to end this session with. Do you have any advice for our entrepreneurs and enablers, these MSMEs on the front lines of our nation's economic recovery?
I guess I can go first this time.
Sure.
All right. I think what I can say is, when everything seems to be putting your business at a tough spot, eventually there's really nowhere to go but up, right? So what you can do is access and be informed of resources like connectivity and collaboration tools that can be made available to you to evolve and digitalize your businesses. They don't have to be hard. They're just around, And in the process, let's not forget our employees and team members' well-being, as yes, you may have improved your business systems, but our team members remain to be one of our best resources.
Yeah.
Mr. Perlada or Butch?
Yes, okay, let me take this on. So my advice for entrepreneurs, really, this is a great time to create a customer. Okay, to create a customer. And that's what we are here for, is to create a customer. All businesses have that, no? So that's also related to your business purpose, because that's going to be your anchor no matter what happens, right? So now is the time to create a customer, develop new products, explore innovative business models, develop, minimum viable products or services for the next normal. Many things are still uncertain, but the next normal, in my sense, will be characterized by three, immutable attributes, if you will. No? I think the next normal will be digital. I think we can all agree with that. It will be green, has to be sustainable, okay, and circular. No waste. We've all learned from this already. So we don't want anything to go to waste as much as possible. So digital, green, and circular. If our entrepreneurs can work around business models that are able to address the pain points in these areas, much like what our startups are doing now, okay, I think that's a very good direction to take to be future ready, if you will. Thank you.
Well, let me just jump in here. I think my advice to entrepreneurs is don't be afraid. If you want to start your business, go ahead and start it now. If you want to pivot to a new way of doing business, try it, because now's as good a time as any. And if it works during this pandemic, it's going to do even better as we rebound, and you'll be in a sweet spot once the economy starts to recover. And the other thing is what Diane said. Don't be discouraged. Don't give up hope, because however long this goes on, sunrise is coming, and hopefully we'll all be there and take off our masks and see each other again in person. And if there's one thing we've learned from the pandemic, is that we're all affected, we're all connected, and we're in this together. So together we'll be back.
Yes, I forgot a little bit of an anecdote that I really want to share after hearing all of this. Okay? About 18 years ago, if you remember, when Alibaba was born, this was actually during the SARS 2, you remember? The story about how Jack Ma and his team, okay, had to find a way to be able to be in touch with their customers, provide them services remotely, high-tech, low-touch. This is actually how they started. And that's why I say, really, if you want to be future ready, now is the time probably really to look at doing business and exploring the possibilities. Thank you.
Absolutely. To paraphrase a common adage, I suppose, it's if you can make it now, you can make it anytime, no? So the pandemic is really a time to make it happen. I think that's a fantastic place to end our session. So I just want to say thank you again, Mr. Perlada, Ms. Montes, Butch, so much for your time. Such a pleasure having you on today's session.
Thanks, Thiago.
Thank you so much, Thiago. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Thiago.
Absolutely. And thank you as well to Eastern Communications, this session's partner presenter. You can visit their website at www.eastern.com.ph to learn more about their business and home services. You can also give them a follow on Facebook, Eastern Communications, and on Instagram at Eastern Comms PH. That's Eastern COMMPH. You can also call their hotline at 5300-7000 or 5300-1000. A huge thank you to the Philippine STAR, our media partner, to BusinessWorld for having me on yet another wonderful discussion around the present and future of work. And of course, to everyone watching, wherever in the world you're tuning in from, my name is Tiago Arnaiz. Maraming salamat. Thank you very much. And we'll see you in the next session of BusinessWorld Insights.
At Eastern Communications, we believe in a strong and personal connection. In prioritizing both our high-tech and our high-touch solutions, we bring back the human connection in the ever-expanding industry of information and communications technology. In doing so, we've amassed a wide array of various solutions designed to not only improve our clients' businesses, but to also create seamless experiences for their own customers. Every business needs reliable connectivity in order to maintain its day-to-day processes. These are only some of the many solutions and services that Eastern Communications has established over the years for our many partners. And while we still have a long way to go, you can be sure that Eastern Communications will continue to be your partner and take you from where you are now to where you want to go. Together, we can all finish strong for our tomorrow.